Area Visitors Bureaus likely owe State Senator Eric Lesser a debt this week after a Boston Globe opinion piece about the region and his priorities for it caught the attention of many. The headline, "The Solution to Boston's Housing and Congestion Crisis? Western Mass." Why should others get on board with this idea? Senator Lesser sat down with me in the studio to explain.
The big takeaway of the piece is that our regions are actually complementary, that you can utilize the whole state to solve each part of the state's different challenges. So, for example, the single biggest challenge you've got in the metro Boston area is nobody can afford to live there. The cost of housing is skyrocketing, rents are skyrocketing, and nobody can get around. The transportation is breaking down, the T is in a terrible state, and the traffic is just getting worse and worse and worse. We actually offer a complementary challenge. Our challenge in Western Mass is in many ways the opposite. In Western Mass, we have great quality of life. We've got a lot of affordable cost of living, but we don't have that fast-growing economy that's attracting people and attracting new jobs and new opportunities. So let's work to connect the two regions, and you solve both issues at once. Western Mass gets access to the fast-paced job market in Boston, and Boston gets access to the great quality of life and the affordable cost of living here in Western Mass. It lifts both regions. And by the way, initiatives like rail service would take tens of thousands of cars off the road. It would probably be the single biggest reduction in greenhouse gas emissions that our state could ever undertake, and it would create thousands and thousands of jobs in the process. So I think really the thrust of the piece was, there's so much commentary right now, especially in the Boston area, on what do you do about the congestion issues? What do you do about the price of housing? And one of the things I've just been trying to get across to really everyone around the state is let's think about these issues in a complementary way. The solutions to Boston's challenges could actually be found not that far down the Mass Pike, so to speak, here in Western Mass.
And in Joan Vernacki's article, as I understand it, it trended online for at least 24 hours, so it was very well read. And there's this great globe illustration where it either looks like you're driving a train or being hit by it, depending on
perspective.
Depending on perspective, yeah. But one of the points is that with high-speed rail plus a major attitude adjustment, Western Massachusetts could be Greater Boston's new hot neighborhood. That was kind of the sub-headline. Has your office, though, received pushback about that? Because I could see residents looking and reading and saying, hey, look, we kind of like the slower pace and the amount of congestion we have, which is not all that bad.
Yeah, so I think this is very important. I'm glad you asked about this, Carrie, because that's not what we're trying to do at all. The Globe headline really, and the piece, if you read the story, is not about mimicking any one place, and we've talked about this on the show before. The goal here is not to turn Western Mass into Boston. That's the last thing we want to do, quite frankly, nor is the goal to turn Boston into Western Mass. Each region has a distinctive identity, and it should stay distinctive because that's what makes each place unique. But we do have some really serious challenges that if we don't think creatively about taking on, we're gonna be in a trajectory that's very bad. We're losing population in Western Mass. We're losing our young people. They're leaving because they can't find good jobs. They can't find good places to work. We've got to reverse that trend. So it's about leveraging what we've got, which is good proximity to some really high growth areas, and also a really great homegrown talent pool right here. So that's why it's not just rail, it's also remote working, leveraging remote working access. It's also investing in our manufacturing sector, closing the waiting lists at our vocational education schools, filling the gaps in the jobs that are already here. It's about investing in a life sciences cluster so that we have researchers and biologists and academics right here in Western Mass staying here and doing their research here rather than going to Boston or going somewhere else. So, I think that that's a misperception. The goal here is certainly not to make us like anywhere or anywhere else like us. We've got a distinctive identity here, but we've got to be creative about continuing to build jobs and create opportunity.
But speaking to that identity, it's kind of a double-edged sword, as she also points out in her opinion piece. She says, credit Lesser's zealotry with getting me out to exit 5 on the Mass Pike, and don't think of it as a mercy mission. Think of it the way Lesser does, as an introduction to the land of opportunity. So I think the subtext there is that many people in the eastern part of the state sort of wrinkle their nose at the idea of coming this far west.
Yeah. No, I think that that's very important. And Boone Sheridan had a quote in the article as well where he talked about the single biggest challenge we've got is perception. Quite frankly, in the metro Boston area, people don't even know. They have no opinion about Western Mass because a lot of people don't even know it exists.
Yeah, they're not really
So
leaving Boston.
one of the challenges, and it is a very important cultural challenge, is sounding the alarm, so to speak, and getting the word out about all the opportunities that are right in people's back door. And I would actually also add, we have to have some culture change in Western Mass too. I think a lot of times we resign ourselves to our region being slower or not growing as fast or not having the same opportunities. I think a lot of times our young people have resigned themselves to not having the same options as a young person in a different zip code. That attitude needs to change also. One of the messages I try to bring when we're out in the community is we need to have some self-esteem as a community and as a region and say, you know what, Western Mass deserves the same investment, the same attention as every other region of the state. And by the way, we have a lot to offer to that equation as well. And I'll tell you, as on the land of opportunity, that was my family story. I wasn't born in Western Mass. I was actually born in Queens, New York. My parents were working their way through their degrees when I was young. When I was 7, we moved to Western Mass, where my parents both started their professional careers, and it was an incredible opportunity for them and for their kids and for now my family. So we've got to get out there and tell the story that Western Mass really is a magnet. It's not a place young people leave. It's a place that people want to be.
This week, when Governor Baker gave his State of the Commonwealth address, he talked a lot about transportation, money for the MBTA, got a lot of headlines. He did not mention EastWest Rail connection at all in the speech. That's the second year in a row that he hasn't mentioned it. Are you concerned that this is a back burner issue for the governor?
I am concerned. The governor is here today. He's going to be at Union Station. In fact, I saw him at the rest stop on the Mass Pike on the way over here. But he's going to be at Union Station today announcing the final piece of the platform to complete the renovation of that station. That's a worthy achievement, and we need to celebrate that achievement. No small thing to have Union Station reopened. But the next piece of this is we need trains coming in and out of Union Station, or it's not going to do us much good. And I'm very concerned that, quite frankly, it wasn't in his State of the State speech. We do have the rail study going on. There's
in which he supported money.
Exactly,
money
which he's put significant money, over $1 million, into that study. It does look like the findings are going to be delayed a little bit, which is concerning, and we need to pay attention to. But they're still very engaged in getting the results out. So I think we need to pay attention, and I think we need folks at home, people in Western Mass, paying attention to the progress here to make sure that it doesn't move down the priority list.
What's driving the delay that you just mentioned?
It's a good question. What MassDOT has told us is, they got really inundated with comments and feedback when the first 6 alternatives were presented back in July. So they've been working through all of that feedback. They've been working through all of those comments and are now going to try to present to us in the next few weeks 3 options. They're going to narrow down the 6 options to 3 options. Something that I think is very important is we really want to push for rail all the way through from Pittsfield to Boston, through Springfield. And the other thing that I think is very important is we've been pushing them to offer a 1-hour option. What would it look like? Just give us a sense of what we need to do to make a 1-hour trip from Springfield to Boston happen. I'll tell you one alternative that they already presented is an 80-minute trip 16 times a day between Springfield and Boston. I mean, people should just think about that. Imagine if you had 16 trains a day going back and forth between Springfield and Boston. What does that do for our community? Think about the jobs it unlocks. Think about the opportunity for young people. Think about the new businesses it will help spur. I can't think of anything that would transform our region more.
When the governor did mention rail in his State of the Commonwealth last year, it was for Fall River and New Bedford.
Yes.
And he pointed out then that it took 30 years for that to happen. Yep. Are you concerned about that here?
I am concerned. Frankly, rail is something people have talked about for a long, long time. But it really, is something I campaigned on in 2014, and we just put the head to the grindstone, or whatever analogy you want to use to move it forward. And I'll say it's been hard because there are some, strong interests aligned to block it. And frankly, in Western Mass, getting infrastructure investment has always been hard. But on the bright side, I think people should appreciate how much progress we've really had. For the first time, the state of Massachusetts is doing a real feasibility study with a real blueprint for how to make rail between Western Mass and Boston a reality. That is a big deal and is not something that has happened ever, at least in my memory. There have been kind of peripheral studies. The federal government has done some studies, but for the state to step in and say, this is something that we're going to put a blueprint together to make happen is a very big deal. And it's going to be on all of us, community members, business, community, everyday people, going out there and saying, we will be voting based on this issue. This is important. We need the investment. We need the rail. And also very importantly, and I think the Globe article got to this is important for Boston too. This is not just a project for Western Mass, because frankly, Boston is going to have problems if they don't get the congestion issues and the housing price issues under control. Rail is going to help both ends of the state. It's going to lift everyone, and I think that's why you're seeing more momentum.
We had Tony Signoli, political consultant, on the show earlier, and he was speaking about how the day after this article was dropped, he was hearing from many people in the transportation sector, like Tesla and others, representing those types of businesses. They were abuzz about this article. How do you leverage something like that?
Yeah, I mean, there's immense opportunity. If you think about it, we're really at a hinge moment in terms of transportation, in terms of technology, so many things. If you think about it, just a few years ago, nobody even knew what Uber was. And now it's something that everybody knows. There's so much opportunity. You're thinking about last mile connectivity, right? So if you have the trains coming in and out of Union Station, which is a few steps from where we sit right now, well, now all of a sudden you've opened up all these opportunities for ride-sharing services, for electric vehicles, for electric scooters, for bike sharing, you name it. And I would add, the new numbers that are coming out of the Connecticut rail service show the demand, over 1 million rides on the CT rail, which is New Haven to Springfield. Imagine in a few years if you had east-west connectivity going from Springfield to Boston, intersecting with north-south service up and down the Connecticut River from Greenfield all the way to New Haven and into New York. That is truly a game changer for us.